welcome back with Beers with Ben. Today I am drinking Lagunitas. It's a limited run. It's like a black coffee stout or something like that. It willetized coffee stout. Um, yeah, it's high ABV. Pretty wow. I haven't tried this before. Another gift from my friend Anna. Cheers, babe. And let's see how it is. Oh, yeah. Actually, that feels more like a bourbon barrel stout than a coffee stout. It says aged in rye oak barrels. So obviously, a rye whiskey. Yeah, I'm not really tasting coffee elements to it, but it's good, but it'll definitely put hair in places you don't want it. It's strong. Anyways, I guess a very strong stout is pretty much fitting for talking about today's song, which we're going to talk. I might talk about the fourth one too if it's not too long of a video, but this one might take a little bit. We're going to be talking about chapter 50, which is called Riddance. So I guess I'll talk about the music first. Okay, so the music, when I wrote it, the first part, I specifically kind of wanted to write it in, I guess, 3 movements. The first movement really is kind of in my wheelhouse, so to speak. It feels like natural progressions to what I normally sort of write when it comes to metal, which I like it, but it isn't anything super complicated by any means. But then the second movement, I specifically was like at the gym one day and just, I've got my gym playlist, got, a couple of 100 songs on it, but, I get tired of it from time to time. I was just sort of like, I know it had to be leg day because like I was not exactly feeling it, but like my lifts were, pretty decent for that day. But, I needed that like extra oomph. So I, went to YouTube and went to like a Slam Worldwide playlist, which you people who don't know, Slam Worldwide will, Slam is, a certain style of metal, hardcore, whatever. You know, kind of fits in with beatdown, at least in my mind. But slam is, we're not talking about like a bunch of doodly solos or anything. This is like straight rhythmic, straight punch you to the balls. I mean, it sounds like something to get hyped to, like in the middle of a fight, like not even before a fight. Like this is straight fight music sort of thing. And I was just listening to a playlist of, Slam Worldwide's like a website, community group, whatever, that is like constantly putting out bands, in this genre of music. And I mean, it'll get your blood pumping. and I'm not gonna like I don't listen to it a whole lot, very often. Whatever, I dig it, um, but it's a fairly underground uh, genre of metal. Um, so like, yeah, it's not something that I go to all the time, but like, anyways, listening to it just kind of stuck in my head, and doing these lifts. Um, I decided like I want to do a song that touches, with that is maybe my own kind of interpretation of slam, but just something very rhythmic, very in your face, very aggressive, and just heavy, heavy, heavy. Um, and then the third movement at the end of the song sort of becomes this doom like descendo. It literally is a descendo because like each uh, phrase, or measure rather, you know, each measure kind of starts out at a certain tempo, like BPM wise, um, and it literally like the next one subtract like 50 BPM to make it, yeah, like 50 BPM slower, to the point where it's just very doom sludgy at the end. And I don't think at the time of writing and recording the song I was necessarily thinking about um, of this outright, but I think maybe at least, at the very least, subconsciously, and maybe it kind of came to the forefront at the end. I was thinking like something along the lines of the acacia strain, because they're kind of like a staple in the metal, deathcore kind of that community genre. Um, but I think it was last year, like they released two EPs. One, like the first I think they came out like on the same day, but it was like the first EP was, their like typical like deathcore sort of thing. And then they did another one that was completely out of their wheelhouse, and it was like straight doom metal, sludge metal, that sort of thing. And I listened to that one day at the gym, and like they did it right. Like their sludgy doom, like it was on point. So yeah, I sort of wanted to do something like that at the end, as a descendo, and kind of come down from the height of basically a fight sequence sort of thing. So let's talk about the literal like narrative meaning for the song. So there's three speakers in this song. The protagonist, of course, but also the Black Knight and a character that we'll just simply call the Ghost. A character we've actually seen and who has spoken before, but we'll get into that. So the literal meaning. The Black Knight and the protagonist at the end of the last song basically come across this cave. I briefly mentioned that. So in the last song, maybe I forgot to mention this yesterday, like in the last video, which I recorded yesterday. Forgot to mention that part of the impetus of them going on this like explorative environmental kind of adventure is that they noticed that there was a light source off in the distance, kind of shining through uh, the like forest trees, like overhead. So they, were moving closer to that, and so in this, basically at the end of the last song slash beginning of this song, they've come to a field or a clearing where there is a cave. But this isn't, a normal cave. It's the cave itself has a strange light emanating from within it. And I kind of think of it as being, so like my all-time favorite movie is Donnie Darko. And in the movie, you see this like space-time sort of thing. You just watch the movie. It's going to sound really strange if you haven't seen it. But there's this like space-time soulish thing they call a liquid spear that kind of comes out of a person's chest, and they follow it like it's some sort of predestination kind of thing within space-time. And I sort of think of it as like the inside of this cave sort of looks like that. It's translucent and clear, but there's all these like weird colors within it. Which like the funny thing is the art piece that I did for it. So like one day I was actually in the gym locker room. I have a big thermos that I mix like every morning before my workout, and I put my amino acids in it, and I also take Jello as a supplement. So I just put straight sugar-free Jello straight into the water and mix it up. But I looked down into it, and it like the powder was floating on the top in this like really weird blue and red sort of swirl, and I like grabbed my phone and took a picture of it real quick, and realized afterwards that like this would make a really cool design of some kind for artwork. And so like I like filtered and manipulated the image on my phone, but took it to like a Kinko's, had it printed out, and then painted over top it, but with like the picture of all this powdery stuff kind of in the background. So like if you haven't seen the artwork, check that out. And it's different from kind of how I imagine it, but like the artwork looks pretty damn cool in my opinion. But anyway, back to point. So they're standing in this field, kind of like looking at this cave, like what the hell is this sort of thing? Like this doesn't make any sense. And out of nowhere, the protagonist notices that there's a mountainous and pale lighted object nearing them, like over the trees of the forest behind them. And the protagonist right away, like he knows what it is, but the Black Knight sees it too, and has no idea like what it is at all. But it's good to note that the Black Knight sees it as well, and therefore with both of them seeing it at the same time, it is something that's real, and it's they're both seeing it. But like not knowing what it is at first, the Black Knight still recognizes that this is like an ultimate danger sort of moment. Like, shit's about to get real. Like, hit the fan, shit's gonna go down, sort of thing. Um, it disappears, like, it's, I don't know how to explain it in words, but it's a huge, dimly, just dim object, uh, person kind of figure thing, just moving closer to them, but it doesn't necessarily have a discernible shape at that moment. But either way, this mountainous object disappears momentarily, but then reappears, coming out from the forest line, and it starts walking towards them and reappearing from the forest line. It comes as a very small, frail ghost. And it speaks to them and says that it wants what is rightfully theirs. So then, with that, the ghost attacks both the Black Knight and the protagonist, hence, like, the slam beat down second part of the song. And it's good to note also that both the protagonist and the Black Knight are fighting very valiantly. Like think some like Bruce Lee, Chuck Norris kind of level shit, like Chuck Norris kills everything, right? Like, these are two trained soldiers. They are ass kickers, even though, like, they hate violence. But this thing attacks them. It's a ghost. But, like, at the same time, like, they're able to, like, touch it as well. It isn't, like, so incorporeal that it's like a cloud or a mist or anything like that. Like, it does have some sort of like bodily form to it. But the problem is that this ghost, as frail and small as it may appear to be, it is 100 times stronger than them. Like, to the degree that, like, within a couple of minutes of the fight, the ghost literally destroys the Black Knight's armor, like, completely shatters it to pieces, and that leaves the Black Knight broken himself and, like, crawling out from the husk of the armor. The Black Knight is crawling across grass, bloodied and like naked, and like we've seen the Black Knight's face, like he's revealed himself, like in face and all, to the protagonist, but like he's completely exposed. Like, this is a dude who, I mean, he's basically got the body of a baby, but he's a grown ass man. But like, despite being naked and hurt and his armor completely shattered, he's still like fighting valiantly, or like not fighting, but like crawling like towards the fight to like try to help the Black, or he's the Black Knight's trying to help the protagonist, because the protagonist is still fighting, but like getting just his ass completely beat. So yeah, the ghost overpowers the protagonist, and I guess it's kind of assumed, but to go on and just say it forthright, this is the same exact ghost, poltergeist, whatever you want to call it, that the protagonist had encountered back in volume 2, in chapter 24. Um, when the protagonist had like a mental breakdown followed by like a couple of dream sequences. So this ghost back in volume 2 was like implied that it was someone from his past, and it reveals that this ghost is female. So this the ghost basically tells the protagonist in a roundabout way to go to hell, and then with her like inhumane force, she throws or like expels both the protagonist and the Black Knight into the cave, where they begin falling or accelerating forward through space time. Um, Space and time, but yeah, through space time. So at the end of the song, the protagonist knows that though he's been beaten and like just completely ass whooped, overpowered, like he never stood a chance, as strong as he is, he still recognizes that the win was in the fact that in itself he resisted a devil, which this ghost, this devil, actually appears to be wearing the face of his deceased mother. Or maybe it is his mother's ghost. Whichever you want to say, maybe that's something I'll explore further down the line a long time from now. But that's basically the story of Riddance in a nutshell. And so with that, we're going to get into the personal meaning of this song. And you know, this is going to be difficult for me. I think enough time has gone by that like I can talk about it without like getting overly emotional. But like I don't know, I may actually cry on this one because like it, it's some shit. I wanted to kind of beat around the bush with this song, but as I was writing the lyrics for it, I decided not to. I don't really have a problem talking about this stuff, honestly, but at the same time, I don't want to talk about it that much publicly because, like, I don't want to demonize anybody involved. I don't want to, like, expose other people, but this song is 110 fucking percent about my mother. And specifically her mental illness. So I don't want to get into a lot of detail because I could talk about this shit for hours. But right around the time when I was in 7th grade, you could say that she had like a breakdown or so, and that's really the first time it started. It would come and go. Growing up from then on, it would last 3 or 4 months at a time, and then she would, revert back to her normal self. And, you know, anyone who knows my mom knows that, like, she's a complete sweetheart. She's, pretty joyous woman and everything, but when she has a mental episode, she becomes 180 degrees different, but there's no reasoning with that. She's been hospitalized 5 or 6 times, I think 6 times over the years. Um, yeah, something like that. Um, I mean, it growing up with that, it, I mean, it's deeply affected me, but it's it's shit. I don't even know where to start with it. It really, you go from extremes really of like being able to like trust her and trust your own mother, 100%, and then it can be like almost like practically overnight to the degree that you can't trust this person at all. Um, and realizing over time that it's not even their fault. It's, some sort of fucking chemical imbalance in their brain or whatever that they have no control over. I mean, what is the exact, what, I don't know, doctor's prognosis? I've heard, bipolar, manic depressive, schizoaffective disorders seems to be the one that was like semi recent, like 10, 15 years ago, something like that, and seemed to make the most sense, even though like it wasn't, some of the descriptions didn't exactly fit, but who knows? When you're dealing with a diagnosis for mental illness, like there's just no telling. It really is kind of a case to case basis. So that's all to say, like it's affected me and the rest of my family very, very deeply. And I guess I can talk about this stuff because I have publicly in the past, and pretty much all those times was to warn people, like writing a post on Facebook to warn people, like, hey, if you know my mom, you need to realize that, like, she's having an episode right now, and like, if you see her or something, like, and she doesn't seem to be herself, like, that's why, you know, to to warn people. Um, anyway, so in the song "The Strangers," mention, a ring and all, which that's the implication in this song. What the ghost has come back to, like, reclaim, to get back what is theirs. That the ring that the protagonist has had was, like, originally his mother's. And so, like, the story with that in all actuality is, so, like, take a step back. Okay, the last time my mom had an episode was back in 2017. Literally, when I gave the eulogy at my mentor's funeral, I had to tell a number of my friends who were also there to keep an eye on my mother, because she was there as well, and it hadn't completely broken out yet, but we knew that, like, another episode was coming. Like, this was like the precursor sort of stuff. And she didn't act out or do anything, but like 3 days after the funeral was when that particular episode really started. And I was reeling from like depression of my mentor being dead, the woman that I wanted to marry no longer being in my life, and I couldn't accept it. Like everything I'd gone through, all the growth, like I just couldn't accept it, and I was just super depressed. And all of it sort of hit me at once, and then oh boom, my mom's having an episode too. Like one of the like darkest times of my life, honestly. Those like 4 or 5 months after the funeral, it was just like hell on earth for me, having to deal with that. But my mom was hospitalized and sent off to a place in Raleigh, and like I'm talking like for I think it was 3 weeks that time. We did not know where the fuck she was. Nobody would tell us anything. No idea. Like she was taken away by like her psychiatrist because she like had her like mandatory meeting sort of thing, you know, or semi-annual kind of checkup, and she couldn't hide it, and her psychiatrist just took her to like emergency room pretty much right away, and it was involuntary. No idea where she was for like 3 weeks. Other than that, she was committed, you know. Um, Maybe it wasn't quite 3 weeks, but it seemed like a long time. But point being, that was the last time it happened. So for 7 years or so, there was no problems until this past summer, and it just sort of manifested literally out of nowhere. I started noticing a couple of like weird things. My brother did too, and then it just was clear that she was having another episode after like 7 years. I'll say that this particular time wasn't even half as bad as previous times, but that's also the problem with it. Because in previous times, we could go get her help. Look here. We like called her doctor this past time, like back in June, July, somewhere in there. Because she was supposed to go see the doctor anyway, and like, it didn't do shit. Nothing. In the past, I've stood before the magistrates downtown, trying to get them to involuntary committal sort of thing, and I know in the past explain everything to the magistrate, and it's like, well, and doing it truthfully, and them saying like, well, it doesn't sound like she's an actual danger to herself or anything like that, so we're not going to do shit for you. And I knew it was the same thing this time. Like, I've had people tell me in the past, well, you should have fucking lied to the magistrate's face, oh, she's gonna try to kill herself, or she's got a gun and she pointed it at you or whatever, and it's like, I just morally couldn't do that. But I've had people tell me that, like, lie to their fucking face, fuck them, play the system. I can't morally do that. So there was like, this time around, there was no point in it, but like the controlling nature of the behavior, and just, I mean, obviously, like, the protagonist kind of represents me or whatever, but in this particular song, the Black Knight represents my dad. Every time it happens, she normally she like my dad's her best friend. She wants to spend every chance she can get with him, but he becomes like the devil incarnate to her. Like, she treats him like complete shit, and it isn't right. And like, he knows it. Like, and when it happens, it puts all of us in crisis mode. When you're dealing with mental illness and dealing with somebody else's mental illness, and you go into that crisis mode, normal rules don't apply. Stuff you would never say ever, you say on the regular. It's like you have to. Like, you're not dealing with typical rules here. Not standing up for yourself just makes things worse, but it's like, anyway, I don't want to ramble on about this, but the most painful thing that I've ever been told, well, the second most painful thing, but up until this past summer, the most painful thing, when I was 20 or 21, I think I was home from college during like a summer break. I'd only been here for like a week or something. I walked into a fight an argument rather, between my brother and dad and her one night, and I went to their defense. And at one point, she thought that I was gonna like get violent with her, and she went up to like slap me. I didn't even, it was just complete instinct. I grabbed her hand and was like, no, you're not gonna do that. And like, my dad being like 5 feet away and watching the whole thing, and like, he was like, you're fine, like, you didn't do anything violent yourself, you're protecting yourself, like, I get it. But at that moment, she looked me dead in the eye and told me that from the way that I was acting in that moment, that no decent woman would ever marry me. That I didn't deserve a good wife. So, like, I referred to that in the first song, in The Strangers. So, fast forwarding to like this past August, one day she and I got into an argument, and I just, like, I was minding my own business sort of thing, and she kind of wanted, things her way sort of thing. And I decided to stand up for myself, and I went to her a few minutes later and told her everything that I really thought. Like, just years worth of stuff. when it concerns only her mental illness, the like way that she's treated my dad during those episodes and all that. And I mean, like, this was me going for the jugular, like straight, like I'm trying to stab as deep as I can, sort of thing, because like you can't bend over. You just can't when you're dealing with mental illness. You have to go for the jugular, and it may seem really fucked up, but you just have to. Like, I don't care what anybody says, like, you have to. But I wasn't yelling. I wasn't even angry. It was me stoic, just, I'm telling you this stuff as facts, sort of thing. And it's like, it just completely bounced off. Like, it didn't have any effect whatsoever. And then, like, the gaslighting started happening, I guess, and she's throwing shit back at me. And it's like this is the strongest. Like, when I talk about, like, the whole mountain and shadowy figure at the beginning of the song, like, I had this sort of ideation one day when I knew what was coming, when the telltale signs started sort of manifesting. And I was literally standing, like, right here, sort of where I'm at, but, well, a couple of feet to the right of me, where there's, like, the end of the brick wall, there's, entranceway here. And I was looking out past the trees, in the backyard, and having this, like, mental image of this mountainous sort of dragon-like thing coming towards me, like towards the house. That's why I wrote it in this song. Just this idea of, the a knight versus a dragon sort of thing, and realizing, like, kind of represents, like, my mom's mental illness and this giant fucking thing that seems unbeatable, and just looking up at the trees, and me saying out loud, like, not this time, like, you're not gonna break me or my family this time. I'm not, this isn't about, like, my mom. This is specifically about this persona, this mental illness sort of thing. Like, my mom and I are cool, okay? This is something else completely. And if you don't understand that, I don't know how to explain it any better than that. But point is, she made some comment to me during this argument last summer, like, well, you're gonna have a good lot, or you're gonna have a hard life by the way you're acting, son, sort of thing. And I just, said sarcastically, well, if that's the case, I might as well go on and kill myself. And she went into this, like, theological tirade about, well, if you did that, like, you deserve to go to hell. You've been treated, you've been taught better than that, blah, blah, blah. And so before I left her and the entire conversation just, like, went about, like, I got in my car and left right after this argument, because, like, literally this last time there were only two people who would deal with her. Or, I mean, she cut off, like, a lot of people from her life, would refuse to take phone calls and stuff like that. And, those friends of hers realized, like, that, things were bad again, so to give it time and distance themselves. But everybody else in family, like, completely cut her off, to the degree that it honestly seemed like this was going to be a permanent sort of thing. Like, her family being like, yep, never gonna speak to you again, sort of thing. Like, it was that real. And the only two people who would deal with her at all were me and my dad. And I was literally like this close to walking away forever, sort of thing. And it was actually my dad who talked me down from that. Like, even though like her treatment towards him was emasculating and just tore away his armor, like, he's still a fucking champ, you know? I don't know how to explain it any better than that. But anyway, at the end of the fight, the whole like hell thing, I turned the like classic evangelical trope on her. And I turned to her, and you know, I was like standing at the doorway about to leave, get in my car and just drive off. She was like 20 feet away or whatever. And I looked her dead in the eye and I asked her, if you knew that this was the last time you would ever see me alive, you know, that tomorrow I was gonna die, and that I would spend all of eternity burning in hell, what would you say to me? And she looked at me for a second, was like, that's not funny. I don't appreciate your, you know, sarcastic humor. And honestly, I looked her dead in the eye and said, I'm not joking. Like, I really want to know what you would have to say to me right now as your firstborn son. And she turned her head for a second, thought, and then she turned back to me and looked me dead in the eye and said, good riddance. And I turned around and walked out the door and got in my car and fucking wept for about 30 minutes. The next day, I saw her, and she walked up to me, and she handed me two diamond rings. One of them was like my grandmother's wedding ring or whatever. One was one of my mom's wedding bands. And she said, you know, I want you to have this. Literally, like, the next day after she told me good riddance. Talk about, like, a mind fuck, by the way. You know, all I can say with this stuff is that after she said that, it's made me question love, unconditional love, and you know, I've always had some problems with this stuff, even though like all my work in one way or another like is a defense towards love and Christianity. And when it's your own mother, I mean, I know that it isn't her. No, it's the mental illness. I know that she doesn't actually believe that way. Maybe subconsciously somewhere, that's why she went on and gave me these rings or whatever, which are like in my room right now. That's a trip to me, because now I've got like two really really nice, what, like an engagement ring and a wedding band that I can propose with, and I've got nobody to give them to me. Like, talk about another mind fuck, you know. whatever. Um, like it's made me question a lot of things. Um, and I haven't completely worked through any of that. Um, maybe take years or whatever, but like it's like I'm not crying right now or anything. Like I feel it sort of back here, but like I'm fine. Um, but I mean, what else can I say? It's like when it's your own mother, sort of thing. Like maybe some of you out there watching this have been told things like 100 times worse, but like I don't know, like 100 times worse by your ex spouse or something, or by like even your own parents yourselves, like say or do something 10 times worse. Um, I mean, I don't know. That's why I don't want to really talk about this stuff because, like, I don't want to talk shit about my mom. You know, 'cause I love her. She's been there for me. She's supported me. She's helped me out a lot. Um, but like when she goes into those like mental episodes, like it's it's a different story. So that's what this song is about, and hopefully nothing I've said is dishonored or demonized her at all, because that's not what I want to do in telling any of this stuff. It's just when when I released Volume 5 and was making the videos for it, I was still dealing with that. Really, when I when the album came out for Volume 5, it was literally coming to the end of the episode for that time. Because, like, we tried to get her help and all, and it just didn't work, you know? But, like, there, I mean, like I said, this time wasn't as bad nearly as past times, but like in a lot of ways for me personally it was worse because it made me question like foundational things that I've always assumed or believed, and not just like with love or anything like that, but like with like nature of like relationships and like marriages and stuff themselves, stuff that like maybe some people would be like, oh, that's anti-feminist, that's sexist, whatever, and it's like, but you've never been on the other side of it when you're dealing with like a devourer sort of thing, you know. So I'm gonna list a bunch of references that I make in this song at this point. So there's a line that says water drag dot 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 growing old. Um, and this is referencing a line from a Rolling Stones song called Mother's Little Helper, which is like about like I think that song's about like a sarcastic song about like middle class mothers taking like Ambien or some shit like that, like back obviously like back in the 1960s, but in the song it says what a drag it is getting old. um, and so another line says, what puzzles you, the nature of my game. This is a reference to the line, but what's puzzling you is the nature of my game, which is obviously another Rolling Stones line from their song Sympathy for the Devil. Why do I make Rolling Stones references? Um, because when my mom goes through these episodes, she hates the Rolling Stones to a passion. Like growing up, she would go into these tirades about "Sympathy for the Devil," the song, and how it's like the most evil song that's ever been written because it's sympathizing the devil, and it's like if you actually read the lyrics of the song, it's it's genius. You know, yes, it's written from the devil's standpoint, but it's actually like saying, actually, you human beings want to blame me for stuff that y'all did yourselves, you know. Like, it's actually a pretty profound song. But, like, she, like, this past time, like, would walk into, you know, fights or arguments or whatever and just be like, okay, I'm going to go to YouTube and start blasting the Rolling Stones from my phone just to, like, piss her off, sort of thing. And, anyways, moving on, there's a, you know, reference to a pale horse, which in, like, Revelation 6:8 is the personification of death. Um, there's a reference in a line of devouring soldiers on distant sands, which is actually self-referential of chapter 2 from volume 1. There's a line or phrase, shadow of this Colossus, that is a reference to the video game. It was like an old PS2 game called Shadow of the Colossus, which I personally never played myself, but back in college I had a couple of buddies that played it, so I would sit there and like watch them play it, and that game was amazing. Like the story for it is amazing, and it's one of those like if you know you know sort of things. Um, Reference, yeah, the Phantom, the ghost itself. Already said that's from chapter 24, self-reference again. That chapter was called Anima, the Second Eve, so that was from volume 2. Um, there, I've said already the devouring mother, which you know I say in this song as a line, which that is a negative archetype in Carl Jung's theories, and that's also been kind of popularized by Jordan Peterson, um, which he's highly influenced by Carl Jung. I've read a lot of Carl Jung, so like I get it. But like the devouring mother negative archetype like fits into all this stuff too. There's a line about rings of power and control, which is a subtle reference to just the Lord of the Rings itself, not necessarily the Amazon, you know, show, which honestly I didn't really watch because I don't know about it, but yeah, just Lord of the Rings and Tolkien in general, I make that reference. There's a line where the ghost says, "In hell I bring with me to its knees," and this was kind of like was not a double entendre because double entendres actually have like a sexual allusion to it, but it's a double meaning. Um, I wanted to play off the phrase of bringing hell with them, you know, like some Tombstone sort of shit. With was that Doc Holliday who said that, or I can't remember, but it was play off of that phrase. Well, I bring all of hell with me, kind of thing, but it also is sort of like referencing that they view themselves as like the ghost views herself as an ultimate good, and that she's strong enough to bring hell itself to its knees in submission. So it's sort of real. It's really kind of both in that respect of this ghost is like at least thinks herself strong enough to make hell submit, but in actuality is also like bringing hell, creating hell with her, you know, some like Sardrian, you know, hell is other people sort of way. So that's, yeah, all the references within the song. And I think well, the fourth song on the album, Tesseract, the end of the song, you know, for this, for Riddance, excuse me. So I wrote the lyrics in a way to really set up and sort of explain what's happening in, you know, the next song or in the previous song, since, you know, the first song has lyrics, the third song, you know, Riddance has lyrics, but then the 2 and 4 tracks are, you know, instrumentals. So Tesseract, so a tesseract is in like mathematics, and there's what's called a hypercube. A hypercube is the idea of a cube, you know, in 4-dimensional space. So we're talking about like space-time sort of thing. And so a tesseract is, in theory, the like line that runs from like one corner or edge of this 4-dimensional cube to a 3-dimensional cube within it, which you can like look up like hypercube or whatever, I don't know, like YouTube or something, and there's these like visual effects that artists or whatever have come up with to sort of illustrate the idea of a hypercube. But the idea is that a tesseract is the connection between like 3-dimensional space and 4-dimensional space. And in Madeleine L'Engle's kids novel, which a huge influence on me, you know, when I like read it in 5th grade, even, I don't know, like 30 years later, I still look at that book and it's just an amazing book. But her novel, A Wrinkle in Time, which they've made like 2 movies out of, the form of teleportation that she talks about in that book, she calls a tesseract. And so it's kind of like the title of the song, sort of a reference to Madeleine L'Engle. And the story in that song, look, it's an instrumental. It was me wanting to write a badass kind of song that isn't, yeah, it chugs some parts, has some aggression to it, but it's a lot like the second song that we talked about yesterday, of, you know, like, I want to write something, you know, more harmonies and stuff like that, not just like, oh, I'm gonna write the heaviest shit that I can possibly write. Like, I wanted to do the same thing with this song, this 4-song Tesseract, and let's see, there's like a section in the middle of the song that sounds like some sort of like pirate shanty sort of thing, completely by mistake. Like, I wrote the like guitar part for that, like thinking, oh, it'll fit well. I recorded it, then like when I played it back later, I was like, oh, this sounds like a pirate shanty or something, but like, I dig it sort of thing. It's, you know, this like post-hardcore like shanty, like totally coincidental, but like I'm all about it. Um, the literal meaning of the song Tesseract, it's it's pretty simple. Like the protagonist and we'll assume the Black Knight too, but they're kind of separated at this point. The Black Knight's actually got thrown into the cave right before the protagonist did. So they're like falling through basically a portal through space time, and they're just falling. Like think about if anybody's seen the like wormhole that Christopher Nolan visualized in oh shoot crap what was it Interstellar, excuse me. Think of it sort of like in those terms, of like literally falling through space and time. It has some like scary moments in the instrumental of the song, because obviously if you're like falling through a portal through space and time, obviously that's going to be pretty damn scary, right? But at the same time, there's some like harmony and some awe and wonder because you're seeing like stars or crazy things just fly by as you're falling through this portal. And so it's like you're afraid, but like simultaneously, like the protagonist in the story and also like the symbolism in real life is like, yeah, you're in this like dangerous situation, but it tends to be like when you're in the unknown, when you're on in the most danger is kind of like when you feel the most alive as well. And so that's what I wanted this song to really portray. And it's really like I already have the ideas of where I want the story to go from here in like volume 7. But this Tesseract really serves as a bridge between like this losing battle to the ghost to whatever happens next. It's going through this wormhole, not sure where you're heading, sort of thing. And you know, when I wrote this song a few months ago, that's kind of where I was at, where it's like, well, all this stuff has happened. My mom's okay now, but like now I've got to live with it. I don't know where things are heading now, but you know, life is a journey, sort of thing. And that's what this song, Tesseract, what I wanted it to be. So yeah, that is my EP. I'm gonna try to remember to promote it more on Facebook and all that, but I've already started on some new music that, well, it's not new music, but you'll understand in some time. Hopefully, release it by the end of June. Is what I'm aiming for. It's going to be 5 songs. That's like written in stone, but this isn't necessarily going to be a volume 7 sort of thing. So it'll be like the 7th album of sorts. But I've already I just finished drums for the 2nd song, actually like early, like this morning. Glad how that turned out. Now I've got to like re-record the bass and guitars and stuff like that because I'm going off a template of some stuff that was previously recorded. Hint, hint. But yeah, until like June or so, thanks for listening if you've made it this far, which maybe like 2 of you have, but thanks, and Well, cheers, my friend.